February 1818 in Talbot County, Maryland, beside a calm creek called the Tuckahoe, is where the life of Frederick Douglass began. Frederick Douglass uses pen and voice in his stand against slavery and the dehumanization of African Americans. His thousands of speeches and writings brought a sense of hope to his people in the United States. His work for the abolitionist movement was heard across the country, influencing many Americans. He became a face of the abolitionist movement and was one of the most important African American leaders in the 19th century. Douglass was quite uncertain of his birthday himself. He had believed that he was born in 1817, but slave records show he was born in February of 1818 to a slave by the name of Harriet Bailey. While his mother was a slave, his father was a white man, rumored to be his first master, Aaron Anthony. Aaron was a clerk for Colonel Edward Lloyd, managing the farms and overseers of his plantation. Douglass, up to the age of 6, had lived a relatively carefree life beside the shores of the Tuckahoe where his grandmother had raised him. At the age of 6, he was moved to the plantation along the Wye River, where he was the caretaker and companion of the daughter of the plantation owner. Frederick was 8 when he was sent to Baltimore to go live with Hugh Auld, Aaron Anthony's son-in-law's brother. In Baltimore, Hugh's wife, Sophia, taught Douglass how to read. Slaves were not supposed to learn how to read, so when Hugh Auld found out about this, he forbid his wife to continue the lessons. So Douglass then tricked his white childhood acquaintances into giving their homework and books to him, and from this, he learned how to read and write. He then later obtained a copy of Caleb Bingham's book, The Columbian Orator, which is a collection of anti-slavery writings and speeches. It is from this book that Douglass learned that slavery was a moral evil. He was also influenced by a part of this book called Dialogue Between Master and Slave, in which the slave uses anti-slavery arguments to convince his master to emancipate him. From this, Douglass learned the importance of rational argument, and he also used this book to hone his reading and speaking skills. After living in Baltimore for 7 years, he was sent to St. Michael's, Maryland, to work for Thomas Auld, where 1 year later, Thomas rented him out to a slave breaker. A slave breaker was a slave owner who would continually beat their slaves to break their minds, and his name was Edward Covey. Covey would often beat Douglass until the day Douglass decided to fight back. Him and Covey fought for nearly 2 hours before Covey finally let him go. Douglass was then rented out to a man by the name of William Freeland, and at Freeland's farm, he organizes a Sabbath school in secret for his fellow slaves, where he teaches them how to read and write. It is also at Freeland's farm where he makes an escape plan with 2 other slaves, but they are discovered and jailed. After he was released from jail, he returned to Baltimore to work for Hugh Auld again. He was then hired out to work as a ship's caulker. This time in Baltimore, he meets Anna Murray, a free black woman who was his future wife. In 1838, he and Anna devised a plan to help him escape. Anna Murray sold a poster bed to give Douglass money, and Douglass also obtains legal papers that allow him to pass as a sailor. He then took a train to Wilmington, Delaware, and then a steamboat to Pennsylvania, a free state. He continued to New York, where he met up with Anna, and they got married in New York. They then went to the whaling port town called New Bedford in Massachusetts. Within months of his arrival in New Bedford, Douglass learned more of the abolition movement. William Lloyd Garrison was a prominent abolitionist in the time period, and Douglass subscribed to his paper, The Liberator. In 1841, Douglass attended an anti-slavery convention held under the American Anti-Slavery Society. He was invited to speak by William C. Coffin at the convention. When he spoke, he told stories of his time as a slave, and the entire crowd was kept on the edge of their seats as he spoke. William Lloyd Garrison was so impressed that he invited him to join the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society. Douglass was enormously influential as an orator. He spoke for the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society and the American Anti-Slavery Society. In 1843, he was selected to be one of the speakers to appear at 100 anti-slavery conventions from New England to Indiana. When he would speak, he would often tell stories of the horrors he witnessed as a slave. Through this, he became a voice of the slave population, as well as for the African American community. He was so well spoken that some people doubted if he had ever been a slave, or even south of the Mason-Dixon line, because he didn't talk like a slave or look like a slave. This accusation was furthered because he withheld certain information as a slave to prevent being arrested as a fugitive slave. These doubts were settled when Douglas and the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society published the 1845 Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. It contained an in-depth view of the horrors he witnessed in slavery and his life up to becoming an abolitionist. This book was wildly successful, selling an estimated 10,000 copies, which was considered a lot for the time period, and receiving positive reviews, such as from the New York Tribune's Margaret Fuller, a prominent book reviewer in the time period. Not only this, but it successfully found a transatlantic audience and established him as a prominent abolitionist and orator throughout the United States. This book put him in quite the predicament due to him publishing information that could lead to his arrest as a fugitive slave. With this, Douglas fled to Great Britain for nearly 2 years to avoid arrest. Eventually, some of Douglas' friends arranged to have him manumitted from Hugh Auld for $711, making Douglas a free man and free to return to the United States. Douglas returned to America in 1847, where he then moved to Rochester, New York, and started publishing his own paper, the North Star. He continued to publish the North Star until 1851, where he then merged his paper with the Liberty Party paper. The following paper was called Frederick Douglass's Paper. This paper, through both of its names, was one of the most influential African-American anti-slavery publications over the pre-Civil War time period. His paper ceased production in 1859 when Douglas left the United States to go on a speaking tour of England. Even though this tour had been planned for quite some time, it may have saved him from being arrested for association with John Brown after the assault at the Federal Armory in Harper's Ferry. Frederick Douglass went on to have a very successful career, publishing 2 more autobiographies, 1855's My Bondage and My Freedom, and 1881's The Life and Times of Frederick Douglass. He also became a recruiter in the Civil War for the 54th Massachusetts Infantry, the first regiment of African American soldiers in the Union Army. During his time as a recruiter, he met with Abraham Lincoln, taking a stand for the rights of African American soldiers, discussing the issues of equal pay and other rights. After his time as a recruiter, he also became the first African American nominee for Vice President of the United States in 1872 for the Liberty Party ticket. He was appointed in 1889 by President Benjamin Harrison to be Minister of the Republic of Haiti. He, being a representative of America, was in many ways a crowning part of Douglas's career. Douglas had gone to being a victim of slavery to being a very successful statesman and representative of America. On February 20th, 1845, Douglas died of a massive heart attack or stroke in his Washington, D.C. home at the age of 78. What happened after was a very somber recognition of his passing throughout the country. People knew as fast as the telegraphs and other means could allow it to be known. Douglas is recognized up to this date for his contributions to the anti-slavery movement, as well as his contributions to advancing other civil rights, such as women's rights. Power and those in control concede nothing without a demand. They never have and never will. Each and every one of us must keep demanding, must keep fighting, must keep thundering, must keep plowing, must keep on keeping things struggling, must speak out and speak up until justice is served, because where there is no justice, there is no peace. Frederick Douglass.